Welcome to Transit Unplugged. I'm your host, Paul Comfort. On today's episode, I travel to Fort Worth, Texas, to speak with Paul Ballard, the president and CEO of the Fort Worth Transportation Authority. We'll talk about his big operation there, the largest CNG fleet in North America, also the great new rail project they've got coming from Dallas-Fort Worth Airport out to the Fort Worth area. All that on this special edition of Transit Unplugged.
What does it mean to be a successful public transit agency? What are you doing to lead the way? It's time to learn from the top transit professionals in North America. This is Transit Unplugged with your host, Paul Comfort.
Welcome to Transit Unplugged. I'm Paul Comfort, your host, and today I'm with Paul Ballard, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Fort Worth Transportation Authority. Great guy who's been in this industry a long time and has some very exciting things happening here in Fort Worth. Paul, great to have you with us.
I'm glad to be here, Paul, and thanks for coming and visiting us today.
Yeah, great. You got a great view here in downtown Fort Worth. You've got a lot going on here. But first, just like to chat, I like to talk to CEOs about their career a little bit. You've been in transit like I have a long time. Tell us about your career and how you ended up here in Fort Worth.
Well, your podcast isn't long enough to talk about all my career in transit, but I started at Indiana University as a bus operator, went through the transit management program under Dr. Smirk, and just kind of built one on the other, moved around, went to bigger transit systems, a fascinating career, and I'm just enjoying being in Fort Worth right now and working on our projects.
Good. So you went from, let's go ahead and walk through the career there. You went from Indianapolis to where'd you go after that?
Well, it was Indiana University
in
Bloomington, Indiana.
Okay.
And then I went over to the East Coast, and I was manager of the Plymouth and Brockton Street Railway, which was suburban service into Boston.
Okay.
And then I joined American Transit Corporation and was general manager in Winston-Salem,
That's
North
where
Carolina.
I knew you, I think, when you were
Right.
at ATC Vancom, yeah.
And then I was regional vice president, negotiating labor contracts and management contracts for several years.
With ATC?
With
With
ATC.
Terry Van Dre and those guys?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, the old ATC, back with the the early founders from way back when.
Okay, when they were just ATC.
Yes.
Yes, okay,
yes,
gotcha.
Yes, and back when it was called American Transit Corporation.
Right.
But stuck with the business, became general manager in St. Louis for several years.
Okay.
Went back to the private sector, was with Progressive Transportation, sold that company.
I remember that.
Did my own management company for a while, and got back in on the public side, did Nashville for several years, and on my way here.
Fort Worth has not invested a lot of money in transit over the years. Do you have like a half-cent sales tax here?
Yes,
Is that what it is?
Yeah, we generate a half cent, and it raises about $70 million a year. But when you look at the rest of the country and look at the rest of Texas, Dart and Dallas, for example, their revenue from sales tax of a full penny is over $500 million a year for operating expenses.
Yeah.
And so, that when people say, well, why can't you guys be like Dallas? I say, well, it's 500 million versus 70 million, and that's really the difference. And but we're doing well with what we have. Our big project is TEXRail. It's a commuter rail between downtown Fort Worth and Terminal B at DFW Airport. That'll be in service in just a little over a year, and so it's a $1 billion project. We saved our money for a long time.
Did you get a full funding grant agreement for that?
We got a full funding grant agreement on December 15th of last year.
Got it right before they cut them off, huh?
Yes, just under the deadline, and that's coming along nicely. Our first train set has been delivered, being built by Stadler Railcar Assembly in Salt Lake City. It's a Swiss company. It's a great train. But it'll be about another year, and we'll have that all in service, and we'll be operational.
How many miles is that from here to?
It's 27 miles from downtown
Wow.
Fort Worth to DFW.
And what's your projected ridership?
Well, we feel it will be right at about 8,000 per day.
Okay.
By the end of the first year, and it'll go up from there.
And your COO was telling me earlier that it's a different kind of train. You've got the engine in the middle, and then the cars. Do you know much about that? That's an interesting design.
It's it's called the FLIRT, Fast, Light, Innovative Regional Train.
Yeah.
And the power car is in the middle. It's diesel, multiple unit, and with cabs on both ends. So it moves quickly through service. You get to the airport. There's no turning or anything. The engineer just walks to the other end of the train.
Yeah.
And then runs it from that end. Seats about 225 people, another 225 standing. We'll run 365 days a year. It'll be 30-minute between trains during peak hours and hour off peak and late nights. But it's got we've established quiet car on each train,
Okay.
Which will be kind of unique.
Just like
for
Amtrak.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we do on the East Coast, they have a quiet
Yeah.
car in every Amtrak train.
So
between
we'll
DC.
do that, and it's a European design, but
Yeah.
it's by America.
That's great.
So it's going to be a great train.
That's
It really
probably
is.
very efficient. I know, when I was at MTA, we ran what's called MARC, the Maryland Area Regional Commuter Train, and we often had an engine on both sides of the train. So that we get between Baltimore and DC, and we get down to one end, and they would go to the other end of the train. But that means you have to have two engines for every. And this way, you have in the middle, you only
It's
you
in
get
the
with
middle.
one. That's really unique.
Right, and it's Tier 4 compliant, meets all the updated environmental regulations in the U.S., and so we're pretty excited about it. It's an all aluminum train, so it's a new technology, but
All
it's very,
aluminum.
very strong. Yes.
Yeah, so that's probably very light. That's great. Interesting. And so, will you
So-
operate that directly, or have you hired a contract company?
We're using Herzog Rail Services, which is the same company that operates our Trinity Railway Express, which we co-own with Dallas Area Rapid Transit.
Yeah. So talk about that. You got something big going on with those guys too, right?
Well, it's been in service now for 20 years, and it runs daily service between Dallas and Fort Worth. It's got a great support. A lot of people use it, 8 to 10,000 riders a day use it to get to work, appointments, and so on and so forth. And so we utilizing Herzog now for our project, which is exclusively Fort Worth transportation. We get the economies of scale of having Herzog management on scene.
Sure.
So we think it's going to work out real well.
Are you doing something new though? A new rail project? Somebody was telling me about that yesterday with Trinity. Is there something, a new line?
No,
Oh, okay.
it's the TEXRail line.
That's what
going
it
to
is.
the
Okay,
airport. Yes.
That's good.
So that's our big project is TEXRail, and then the other big issue is that we did a complete master plan layout for all of Fort Worth and Tarrant County, and now we're working through that, trying to raise the funding to expand the bus service because, as you know. The rail services can be the trunk of the tree, but you've got to have the limbs to
That's
feed
right.
the train stations.
Yes.
And so that's really where we're working now is to try to build out those limbs and the bus routes and so on. And we're working hard. We're getting a lot of community support. Not a lot of money yet, but we think we'll get there.
Right. What's your annual operating budget here for Fort Worth Transit?
We're programming this coming year about $71 million.
Okay. And your capital budget?
Well, capital budget is kind of crazy because of TEXRail.
Right.
I mean, our capital budget for next year is around $600 million
Wow,
for wrapping up
Yeah.
TEXRail.
So almost 9 times what your operating budget is. Very
Right,
unusual.
but that's because of the big
Sure,
construction
yeah.
project. But we also have ongoing capital projects on the Trinity Railway Express. We're doing a big bridge replacement close into downtown Fort Worth,
Okay.
which is a $32 million bridge that we're going to start in the next fiscal year.
Gotcha.
It'll take us 2 years to do it, but it's a 1903 bridge that's needs to be replaced.
And what's the population of this service area that you serve in Fort Worth?
Well, Fort Worth itself is about 850,000.
Okay.
But the whole metro area is
service
the
area.
fourth largest.
That's what I thought.
urbanized
With
area in the
Dallas and
United
Fort Worth,
States.
yeah.
because
It's big time.
It's New York, Chicago, New York, LA, Chicago, and DFW.
Okay.
And according to the Council of Governments, we'll surpass Chicago within 10 years. in
Really?
population.
Yeah, everybody's coming to Texas.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Just look at the traffic. You'll see.
Yeah.
That's why we're trying to build transit. We're trying to get ready for folks.
So what's your daily ridership on your service?
Well, we do about 10,000 passenger trips a day
Okay.
on the bus service,
Okay.
and but that's totally inadequate. We've got to build on.
Yeah.
And as we implement the master plan, we know that those numbers will start to go up. We're battling to a certain extent some of the overall bus ridership declines around the country.
Yes.
But we think that we have a good plan to reverse that, and we're seeing reverses in the areas where we've actually implemented the master plan, which is essentially frequency.
Okay.
That's how you get people to use your services.
I agree with that.
It's got to be frequent.
Yep.
It's got to be simple. It's got to be, don't go take all these turns,
Right.
keep the buses moving and have them very, very frequent. And we're seeing that where we implemented that level of service on the north side of Fort Worth, we're seeing increases in ridership. So
Are you doing what's under 15-minute headway, so considered high frequency in some of those routes?
15 minutes is
Yeah.
the best we're doing right now. We
Okay.
have one route in the downtown that runs every 10 minutes.
Okay. Wow, that's great.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what people are doing all over the country. as you know, is moving to high frequency transit, rerouting their bus networks, which is, the workhorse of a public transit system. Now, a couple comments on that I wanted to have you comment on. One is you're unique here in Fort Worth, I think, in that you contract out a lot of the operations, or most of the operations, is that right, for fixed route impaired transit?
Well, this is a traditional southern or southeast or southwest state where you have conflicts in the federal and state law, where we're not allowed to bargain collectively with our workforce. So therefore, we have an outside management company that is actually the employer of all the union members. I mean, it works well. It's not a problem, but our management company, which is RATP Dev, actually negotiates the labor contract, signs the labor contract with the employees. We, as the authority, we set the budget, so that's the control.
Right.
And then they have to negotiate within the budget that we give them. But it's really worked very well. And then we also, because we use Herzog Rail to manage our rail services, we have some local cab and mobility companies that do some of our paratransit work. So it's a true public-private partnership in many respects.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I think it works well for us.
Yeah, and I'm sure it helps you be very efficient as well financially to have that kind of arrangement. That's great. You've got a control mechanism in place with the budget, et cetera. Yeah, that's good. There's a lot of transit trends that are happening now across the industry. Some of it involves microtransit or companies like Lyft and others to help reduce. Are you doing anything with those?
Yes, actually, Denton County Transportation Authority to the north of us here actually has an active program in one or two communities where they're subsidizing Lyft and Uber trips. We're currently working to establish some of that here. We've picked a geographic area that we're focusing on, and we're working with attracting the funding, because we're not just going to throw our money out there and say we're going to do it. We've got to build our base network first. But we anticipate having a partnership in 2018 for that.
Oh, that's great. So as we look to the future of transit, part of what I've been doing is analyze a lot of what's going on in America and around the world with transit. To me, it seems like transit authorities have often acted, and we have been, mobility monopolies in cities. We're the only ones that were moving people. But now there's this disruptive technology which is coming in, which is basically all tied around the smartphone and people being able to, like we talked about, getting a Lyft vehicle or these new companies like Bridge that's now gone to Australia and other kind of transportation networking companies that doing that. How do you see that impacting transit going forward, or even autonomous vehicles coming here? What do you see? I mean, you've kind of been in this industry a long time. You've got the benefit of that experience. What do you see coming right around the corner? What do we need to be ready for as an industry?
Well, I think the trends that you described are all good. Anything that gets people out of the single occupant vehicle, that they park in their garage at home, is good for transit. It's good for everybody. It's good for the communities. And so I view it sort of as the restaurant district or the motor mile where you go buy your car. I think that all of that improves people's willingness to give up the single occupant vehicle.
Yes.
And I think that we have to look at deploying all of the tools in the toolbox, and it's everything that you described. All of those things have to be a part of it. We have to embrace it as we design our new train stations to open for a year from now. We're making sure that we have space for vehicles to come in, drop people off, pick people up, wait, for Ubers and Lyfts, and all that's got to be designed into your facility, in addition to multiple bus bays that can handle up to 60-foot buses. So we're designing the stations for the future to really handle any and all eventualities.
That's great. Very interesting. And you seem like you've got a great staff working for you here. I'm sure that's a lot of the CEOs are very often want to compliment their staff and talk about that. I've met your COO. Seems like a great guy. You've got a great team here, don't you?
We have an excellent team.
Yeah,
we're a small team, but everybody is sharp. They're dedicated. They work together as a great team, and we're making great progress as a team, along with our board of directors. We can't forget.
Yeah.
The board.
So tell us how are you governed here? We
have an 11-member board of directors. 8 are appointed by the City Council of Fort Worth, and 3 are appointed by the county court or the county commission.
Okay.
And we get really, really good appointees who are very interested in what we do. They understand the difference between setting policy and management, which is very, very, very appreciated, and but extremely supportive. And it's a great group. It's primarily business people, and they get it. They don't want hours-long meetings.
Right.
They just want to say, tell us what the issue is, what's your recommendation, let's make a decision and move on. It's been a great relationship with the board.
That's great, Paul. And your system has got a lot of accolades here. I mean, I think you've put Fort Worth on the map when it comes to the transit world. In Texas, which is what, the second largest state in America after California, is that right? Land-wise?
Well, I think Alaska's first.
Okay. Ah.
Yeah, Alaska's first.
I didn't know that.
And then I think Texas is second.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So we're still ahead of California.
Yeah. So how is your relationship with TEXDOT? Do they help fund you, oversee you, or are they just highways?
Well, TEXDOT is a multimodal agency.
Okay.
Unfortunately, they are dealing with the same political processes that many states around the country are, in that there's not a lot of support for public transportation. TEXDOT itself is very supportive. They're smart people, and they try to work with us. Their hands are somewhat tied by the legislature, which is going through whatever it is we're going through in this country right now, and will emerge from it. But they're good people to work for. They don't provide any funding for us.
Okay.
We don't get any.
Is that right? Nothing from them. Okay. Interesting. I guess last question would be, I see you're holding a mug about the Van Cliburn piano competition. I'm a pianist, so it's very interesting to me. It was held here in Fort Worth. Tell people around the country a little bit about what's cool here in Fort Worth. I've been to a few of the things here as a tourist in other visits, but I don't know that everybody knows the really neat background of this city and what you could come see when you come here.
Well, Fort Worth is a great city. I moved here from Nashville, and because I love Nashville, but I've really come to love Fort Worth. We have a very livable, walkable downtown. I actually live downtown. I walk to work, takes 6 minutes, or I hop on the shuttle bus or whatever. It's easy to move around, but we have some great cultural resources here. The Cliburn that you mentioned is a huge worldwide class event that occurs every 4 years. Just happened this year. And music competition. It's awesome. I went to many of the.
Have you? I've seen them on TV, but never got to go to one. Yeah,
it's really, really wonderful. We have a wonderful museum district. They're, once again, world-class museum districts.
Right, and then you've got the cattle march, right? That's what I went to. What's that about? Talk about that for a second.
That's our old stockyards.
Yes,
that's through the 1960s and early 70s, a lot of the cattle drives still came to Fort Worth, and we had the big meat packing companies, Armour, and one other, and they processed all that meat. Of course, that's all not done anymore, but we still have the stockyards, and they've become quite a tourist attraction. And there's a herd of these longhorn steers that walk down Main Street in the stockyards a couple times a day, and people come from all over the world to watch.
It's phenomenal. I mean, it was very impressive. I can still remember. My kids loved it. It was great. Yeah.
So I mean, it's culture and cowboys, they say, and so it's a great community. People are friendly. They're welcoming. We just need to get them to open up their wallets for transit.
There you go. That's right.
That's the key.
Well, your new rail project sounds very exciting. I hope to be back in a year or two, and see it when it's in operation. Maybe ride it myself from DFW out here. That'd be awesome. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Okay, my pleasure, Paul.
Yep. We've been talking to Paul Ballard, who is the head of Fort Worth Transit here in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm in his office overlooking downtown Fort Worth. A great operation, a great team here. Thanks for being with us today on Transit Unplugged.
You've been listening to Transit Unplugged, powered by Trapeze Group. To stay up to date, subscribe on iTunes or Google Play, or join the conversation at transitunplugged.com. Thanks for listening.